So we got to talk to Dave Hillis last week, and he's engineer, producer at the Vault Recording Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He offers mentoring and help for anyone who wants it. So, and I contacted him through Instagram. I think I might have posted a guitar video or something. He might have liked it, and I looked at his profile and was like, "Oh my God, this dude worked on 10 and Temple the Dog." And one day I just messaged, "Hey man, I do this little podcast. You want to attend?" And it was just like an instant, "Yeah, let me know when." I really didn't expect that. So, yeah, this dude is super cool. Yeah, he's got lots of projects going on with Identity Crisis, Kevin Martin, a Candlebox. The dude is super approachable, as you'll see, and is just it's just a really cool hang. It's awesome to talk with someone like that.
What do you mean by mentoring? Like if I said, "Hey, I lived in Pittsburgh," and I said, "Hey, I want to learn how to record," or
maybe if you have a mix or recording or something, or just a general question.
I like to know, is he still as much pressure as the Rick guy put on him?
I wonder if he puts that much pressure on himself.
Because the way he was talking about, he's just hard to work for and stuff like that. And I was wondering.
I got to do where he's coming from. I've worked for people like that before. I was kind of like, I get it.
Where were you at where it was like that?
Let's just say the boss was a perfectionist and would say, "Do this," and then would monitor you every 5 minutes to make sure you did in fact do what you were told to do. And
was it in a band that you did? I said, was it in a band with me?
Anyway, no comment.
Let me watch you do this.
No, not at all. Like, which way do you look if you're lying? Not at all.
Yeah, I was surprised, but not surprised to hear that. It was like, of course it had to be fun, but of course, there's pressure too, but he made it clear it was not fun.
Yeah, I know. You said, so did people get shit canned over stuff like that? Or basically what you asked him, and he was like, oh yeah.
He didn't know it was going to be as big as it was. To him, it was just another day, and like, recording these people's tape, whatever. Now, he was a really cool cat. I loved all his stories. I meant what I said during the episode, though. Like when he was talking about the punching in and stuff, I knew that existed, but just the way he described it, it really messed with my mind. I was like, that would be absolutely nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing it at that level that he was
that kind
at.
Of pressure. What kind of life does this do? All his stories were like, so I was at a bar and Stone Gossip comes up. I'm like, whatever.
Well, it's not even that. It was. I was working. I had to get a job, and I was working.
His real dad's Forrest Gump.
I've worn lots of shoes. Mama said they'd take me anywhere.
Oh my God. Fascinating life.
Here's episode 7 of the Egg Timer Hour.
Talk about stuff, important stuff. Unlike's Egg Timer Hour.
We're now live. Joined today is a man who wears many hats. He's a guitarist, producer, engineer, a jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Please welcome Dave Hillis. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm thrilled and elated and honored that you would take time out of your busy schedule to sit down here with us and just more or less shoot the breeze and nerd out on some music.
Nude out.
We can nude out later. We'll put that on the OnlyFans
channel. Yeah, we're very pleased to. Me and Brandon was talking yesterday. I was like, we've done this a while, and I'm just not the type of guy to get nervous about talking to people. But I've read all your accomplishments and stuff. I'm like, I'm kind of starstruck by this guy.
Oh, much too kind.
I mean, I won't lie either. I've had nervous energy all day. It's just like whenever I watched that podcast last night that you'd done previously. It was gosh, I want to get the name of it right. I have it right here. It was Custom Cut Studios. It was a 2.5 hour.
Oh, okay, yeah. That was more like two engineer guys.
Yeah, I was picking up
about things.
I didn't come across as bitching. I thought it was wildly entertaining because it's we'll get to that later because I don't want to beat you over the head with Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains stuff, but to be in the thick of that is pretty amazing. I would think, because I see you share a lot of stuff about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's so funny to me being so close to it. In those days, I had a completely different view of it then as opposed to now. Like now I kind of, I have a much different perspective of it being older and realizing how much of an impact it really made to people, and looking at it as I looked at records, I guess, when I was younger or whatever. But now everybody's older, it affected and became iconic, some iconic records I was lucky enough to work on. It's just at the time, it didn't, seem like that. I had different kind of goals and, ambitions, and everybody that I'd worked with, nobody was really famous yet or anything. It wasn't like one of those sessions where I worked in a famous person came in. So I was kind of new what, there was already a, something established. And with this, we were all, friends and local kind of friendly, competitive guys and bands. And plus I had some kind of history before any, with my own kind of, indie record success and stuff. And, just never would have thought that it would be so, part of a decade and made such an impact that it did worldwide. I just, at the time, and it took me, a number of years to really even realize that that they were, I mean, I knew they were successful, but it just seemed so foreign,
I'd say there's a lot of people that probably have that same sentiment that were involved in it.
Yeah. I mean,
there's no way you would know that was going to go.
I mean, everybody, hopes and dreams you're going to be successful or a rock star or whatever it might have been. But I don't think, you can ever plan for like being, voices of a generation.
Mega successful.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get too far ahead of that. Like, David and I, we're in our 40s now. It's not happening for us, as it were, and that's okay. We're fine with that. But
I battled that thoughts all, my whole life.
Well, let's back up. You were born in Brooklyn, New York. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So when did you first get like the music bug that you knew that this was going to be a lifelong profession and I assume passion?
Without sounding corny or whatever, but kind of all the way back from my earliest memories. I was 5 or 6, and there was neighbors up the street in Brooklyn that had a piano in this pretty this ball, or what they call it, a parlor. It was very Brooklyn, and I was over there, and my family would be visiting them, and I'd go over and just start first thing, go to that piano and start just playing on it. So I remember my older brother, people noticed and they're going like, this kid wants to do something with music. Right. So I started doing some piano lessons there then. And then, also funny enough, this sounds crazy, but my next door neighbor in Brooklyn was a guy named Pete, known professionally as Pete Steele, from a band called Typo Negative.
Oh yeah.
And before that, a metal band called Carnivore. He was my next door neighbor, a couple years older than me, like literally next door, like brownstone. So they were attached, the house was attached. And so he was playing music before me, and I'd be over there, and he was playing Maxwell's Silver Hammer by the Beatles all the time.
Oh, wow.
What you would imagine that guy would be back then. And then I moved, and then when we moved to Seattle, a suburb of Seattle, actually, but, I was upset for leaving, kids leaving school and his friends and stuff. And I don't know, Seattle wasn't even on the map then, it was like, I thought there was going to be cowboys and Indians and stuff.
I'm going to be a logger.
Yeah. It was back then. I remember telling people as a kid, and they were like, that's by Alaska, and so part of that was I made my parents promise me that I could take guitar lessons when we got settled, and started taking guitar lessons. And the guitar lessons I took was a guy named Rick Knotts, who ended up being a guitar teacher for like all the guys from Seattle, like
really
all the guys from Queensryche and just he was the guy. And then then high school came and I started bands, drawing my logos and everything on the Peaches and playing guitar. I was totally a guitar nerd, and
So how old were you when
I've
you
just
picked up?
always have done. And then and what's funny is then as soon as I could get a job at 15 and a half, I could work one day a week. And there was this mom pop record store right by our, right in that general area there of where we lived. And one day a week, I got a job there stocking shelves. And then I ended up working there for a number of years. And so I was learning stuff from that. And I was using that money to go to book studio time, even right from the beginning. And the reason why is because I was impatient to learn. So I started bands, and everybody wanted to play Judas Priest or AC/DC and stuff. And I learned the beginning of the riffs, and then I didn't want to learn it more. I just wanted to write my own songs. And so everybody thought, kind of said, Hillis is no good. He sucks. He can't play a song. And so I just started renting studio time and got guys to play with me what I wanted to do. And so, I just kind of been doing it always.
So how old were you when you first started to play guitar?
10 is when I first started taking lessons. 10. And then I got pretty nerdy on it. I also kind of started getting into classical guitar and Spanish and stuff like that. And
Oh, wow.
was going that way. And then I just wasn't that disciplined. And then when playing in bands, I just started being like, I just wanted to go on tour or something, I was dreaming those early classic rock records like Styx and Boston. And I was seeing Rush, I was seeing myself on stage at that point.
So you're just absorbing and not learning the covers so much.
Yeah, I was getting ahead of myself.
Well,
but it kind of worked out for me because it got me going. I was ahead of everybody at my age because I just was naively bold and ambitious. And
yeah, a lot of people I think lack that. I think that's a great strength to have, to just perform your own material and try to record that and get people excited about that.
I got it was a hard move because I remember I got fired from my own band, these guys, the first guys I put together in high school, which affected me. And I was like, okay, and then that led to me, like I said, going into the studios. And I had a tape. I mean, it was crap, and working at the record store, I just started looking at record labels, and I saw Metal Blade Records, which was a metal label that had a compilation album out called Metal Massacre 5. And I just started sending them to labels. I sent it to them, and I got a letter back, and I was accepted. I mean, I opened the letter. I still have it, actually. You're accepted, awesome. And had the logo on it. I was like, I made it, and that same year there was a Northwest Metal Fest compilation record. It was a big thing then, and we got on that. So we were on same song was on two compilations.
That's awesome.
Now, the Metal Massacre, just for if people don't know, that was like the one the earlier ones like Metallica, Slayer. The one we were on, had some bands that went on to be pretty big, like Voivod and Celtic Frost and Metal Church, like that whole early day metal, right, thrash kind of thing. And then that took us down to San Francisco to play the Bay Area. So I was 17, graduating from high school.
So
oh, wow.
Mace now that you're Mace, right?
Yeah.
That's great. So
I mean, we weren't very good, and our recordings were horrible, but we made up for it with just energy and nerve and
well, it seems like the fidelity of
attitude.
A lot of recordings then wasn't the best.
No, and we had no concept of it,
Yeah, you printed a record that's where mission accomplished.
Yeah, and if somebody said they were going to put it out, great.
Right.
I mean, the fact that these people were putting records out with kids' demos for the most part,
That seemed to be like the thing too. Like even like
It was punk
Soundgarden and
rock and all
Nirvana,
that.
like they would get on like compilation records was a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
places where people got
Yeah,
their
yeah.
start in one of those things. It just doesn't happen anymore. There's
No, well, yeah, it's a whole different
no
thing.
compilation CDs. So how long does Mace go on for? You're 17, and then
We put out a second record in '87, and we had American deal at that point, and then we had a deal in Europe, a French label, and I mean, we got internationally known. It was, I mean, this sounds crazy, but we had in my mother's garage, we had boxes of fan mail from everywhere, from all South America, all the Eastern European countries, Japan. We were on the charts in England and in Japan, and like all these college radio stations around and independent radio stations around the world would have these metal shows, and we chart on all of those. And it was that time when there was fanzines,
yeah,
and we were in every fanzine, and that was the trick to make it then in that genre. And we just, you went, like, we would have weekly, bi-weekly, everybody chipping some money to send stacks of vanilla envelopes with our tapes or CD, or not CDs, so weren't even around yet. Records, whatever we had, pictures, and you just mass mail the things, and you get impressed, and then that's how you did it, and that's how we tore. We didn't have a booking agent. We would, some of our tours would just be us, like, making friends with a lot of the San Francisco bands, Death Angel or somebody, through seeing them in the same magazines, and we'd write to them and say, hey, we're so-and-so from Seattle. If you come here and play, we'll set you up, and if we can come down there. And then there'd be like these 15-year-old kids. We think we're going to meet some guy, and it's a 15-year-old kid, and he's promoting a show somewhere in some weird part of California, whatever. Yeah. And we're just winging it. But it was like this fun road trip that we're just a band, but we were just kids out on the road, just like
seems
crazy,
like that's where it
on the
starts
loose
for everybody. I mean, the Beatles were kids too, essentially, when they're playing,
Yeah, and there was that's when the beginning of crossover was starting. So we play a lot of punk show, open up for DRI or Circle Jerks or a lot of these famous punk bands from that time, and they'd hate us. And then we'd play in metal shows, and we were a little too punk. We had a punk influence, and then we weren't metal enough, so we had that. But that actually made us kind of known, because
that's where thrash lived.
We were like, yeah. So that's what it was. So I mean, it's kind of always just, that's kind of what I've always done. And there's been total lows and big highs.
Oh yeah,
lots of lows in between everything. It's a roller coaster. So I quit, all the time. There was a period where I'm done, I'm out. It's the end. There's nothing left now. What could be next? And then there's something.
Well, bands are just so dysfunctional by nature. It always seems like
I didn't even know any different, because I've been doing it so long that was just,
So is that what happened? Y'all just kind of get sick of each other and just kind of
I don't know. Well, in my situation, I was always more serious and more ambitious than everybody else. And I was, I shoot for something. What's the next thing? Or this isn't going to be big enough. I wanted to have a major label record deal and do the thing. And what's funny, if I would have stayed, my own mistakes, if I would have stayed kind of with some of that stuff, I probably, but you never thought Slayer or Metallica would be household names.
Yeah.
There's no way. And so if I probably would have just been one of those guys who just stayed metal for life, I probably would have had a long career in that. But my musical taste would mature, and I'd want to do different things, and and I wanted to be more successful and able to get to that next level of making real records and things like that. So I started outgrowing people that I was playing with and stuff in that regard.
Yeah, I think as you get older, your version of success changes. It doesn't always mean money or major label or stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and then the realization once you have the major label and things like that, that's a whole other story. And
getting major label problems
when it's gone, and then it's like, what now? That's a whole other go to therapy for that stuff.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't. You hear a lot of these, I don't know, hair metal guys or something who totally lost it after it was all over and things like that, or whatever, even actors or whatever. And I didn't have it to that degree. I didn't make it that big, but it is weird when you have a label. And like, we were lucky when I finally got a deal, we had a lot of ace cards. We had big management, big this, big everything. And they're telling you, and all the signs are pointing, you're going to be huge. You're going to do this is that, and then one day it's all over and the phone stops ringing and they're not answering your calls, and like it gets weird and you're like, what? And then, you're at a certain age where you think, well, now what am I going to do now? It's all over. I'm too old. For me, I was like, oh, I had that shot. Now it's over. And,
we're like 25.
Yeah, there's all, like I said, there's all that roller coaster.
Were you like 25 years old when you're telling yourself it's over?
I was 29 when I finally got the deal, and it was kind of like this 30-year-old deadline. The other guys in the bands were all in the early 20s. So I was like the old guy at 29. But I was definitely more experienced. I'd already made Pearl Jam records, and I'd already had that first part already happened. So I was a little more experienced, but still, it tripped me out when it was over.
Now, when you were 17, were you pretty heavy touring at that young of age?
I mean, I wouldn't call it heavy touring. Yeah. To us, it was, but it was really, teenagers in a van. But we played some amazing shows. We mostly did West Coast and down in the South. We were booked all the time. We were booked all over, whether we made it or not. Yeah. Or our van would keep going or whatever kept us. And then we were doing so well over in Europe, so we were supposed to go there, and that's a whole other story. Our lead singer he was nut. He was crazy, and he got in trouble with the law with one of our shows, mind you, and so then he couldn't get his passport because he had court dates, and then that's really what led to our breakup. Then us not being able to go overseas was just heartbreaking.
Oh yeah,
we were going to try to replace him, and that didn't work. And it was just
just wasn't meant to be.
But yeah, I mean, we tried our best. But we did a leg of the very first Slayer Show No Mercy tour. We played with all kinds of famous punk rock bands, giant couple of big festivals in like Long Beach, California, which is, you name it, all the metal, like even some bands like Suicidal Tendencies and
oh wow,
all that stuff. We'd play San Francisco a lot, and we'd have the guys Metallica in the audience, and
that's pretty cool.
If you're really into all those, I could drop a bunch of names, but it doesn't mean much. But
fire away
at that
drop
time,
it right on my foot.
For us at that time, it was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody knew who they were, really. I mean, you got to remember, none of this stuff this is way underground still.
So you're up there playing, and did you look out there and see like Kirk or James kind of give you like?
Yeah, well, actually, it was Cliff. Cliff and Kirk, who were usually at our shows.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's something, because I know what it's like if I see one of my musician buddies and I'm up there and I do something, and they get, they kind of give you that face or whatever from the crowd.
Yeah, you know who did that? That's funny you said that. Most memorable, what you just said, was Kerry King from Slayer. The first show we opened for them, and I believe nobody really knew who Slayer was at all. I mean, hardcore people, but I knew who he was and stuff. Like I said, being a record guy, I had first dibs at everything. I knew this stuff. So, I was sound checking, and nobody's there yet really in the hall. And, he walked right up the stage, and he's like this.
He's like Kerry King.
And I'm like playing, and he gave me a heads up like this or something, and walked away. I'm like, whoa, Kerry King.
That's awesome.
But like I said, he wasn't even famous in it all,
But still, you knew who he was, and
I knew who he was, so it mattered to me. Yeah.
So he became Kerry King later. That's amazing. So,
Anthrax, we played with those guys and stuff like that.
Wow.
who was your favorite to play with, or did it
Um,
matter?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, because it was really fun always playing in San Francisco in the Bay Area. At that time, that city was on fire. You know, like they talk about.
That's where everybody was going.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there was the LA thing, but then the Bay Area is where that whole, Metallica came from, and all that wave was happening. So we were coming from Seattle down to that and trying to fit in, and it was exciting to us at that time because what we were doing wasn't really a thing in Seattle. Seattle had at that particular moment, Seattle really didn't know what it was yet. It was in between things.
Is that kind of like when there was Tad around by then at all?
No. This is early. This is like, no, it was like early Seattle punk rock stuff was happening. Maybe Queensryche Queensryche was doing its thing, but there was that middle time period. You had the 70s with Heart and stuff like that. The 80s in Seattle it was like the downtown Seattle scene was like more punk rock, and then there was the east side suburbs were like kind of metal, and it hadn't developed into anything yet. There was like an arty punk scene going on in
it was still gestating
downtown, which meant a lot because that actually was a big influence into the sub pop and record labels.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where some of that started finding itself.
Had you been involved at Sub Pop at all, or?
No, I was kind of anti Sub Pop at the time, because I was coming from something else. By the time that was starting to happen, I was, like I said, I was trying to move. I'd already seen and done this punk rock thing and this indie thing, and I was trying to now think, what is my next thing that I want? I wanted to mature and get into something that was going to, like get that major label type success. So I was kind of staying away from it. And it was kind of a cliquey scene.
Mm-hmm.
I was savvy, so I always kept, I went to the shows and knew the people and all the players and stuff, but I kind of had different. I was really getting into anything from England. I liked a lot of the alternative rock stuff from England, so that was influencing me in songwriting and stuff like that.
What bands were those at that time?
Oh, anything from Bauhaus and Susie and the Banshees, Echo and the Bunnymen, Church.
That's awesome.
That kind of Cure, all those kinds of things. I was kind of getting into that. That was kind of my way out of metal and punk rock.
So you're just kind of over it, taste changing, time to.
Yeah. I was just kind of, and then Europe started romanticizing that idea, and England, and
Did you ever make it to Europe on any tour?
I did, not at that time, but I did, kind of in a big way. I went. I married an English girl and was over there for a while, and yeah, and then now I'm there a lot. But that's later in the timeline.
Okay, so I imagine we're getting close to you working at London Bridge Studio in Seattle.
Yeah.
Is that kind of, I'm just going to do this on the interim until I find my new band or put that together? Or
pretty much. I was going through different. Yeah, I had a rehearsal room. I always had my own rehearsal room, and I'd be out at the clubs. I saw Nirvana at one of their first shows and at the Vogue, and play. I'd be out like meeting people and musicians and stuff like that. And I had a rehearsal room, and I'd bring people out. We'd kind of start something. I was. Yeah, just started some different bands. Nothing really stuck. So yeah, while I was doing that, actually, I knew about London Bridge because it was a really cool studio that was built, and I went there for some event, and I was talking to an engineer or something. I'd seen it, and was impressed, wow, because there was nothing really like that in Seattle for of that size. And I'd been, like I said, I'd been going to a lot of the studios, and I took it for granted. And even when I came out, like Seattle's always had a lot of recording studios.
Really?
I thought every place was like that, so I was so lucky that I ended up in this town from New York to there that ended up being such a musical town. So yeah, during that period, I had a lineup of people in a particular band, and I just booked some time there because I'd been everywhere else. And everybody was hearing like Alice in Chains, different things were coming out of there that were sounding like real records. It's like, whoa. So I booked some time there, did that, and then didn't really meet Rick Parasha, the producer and owner, along with his brother Raj. But he saw me in there, and I was working with another guy that was engineer out of there, because Rick really wasn't full time there or anything. It was more Raj's kind of studio. That's another story or get into, but he saw me there. And then a few weeks later, I ran into him in one of the rock clubs, the music clubs in Seattle. And he said, "Oh, hey, I saw you at the studio. How'd it go? Did you get your things done? Did you like it? Blah, blah, blah." I said, "Yeah, it was great." Da, da, da. And then he noticed that I knew pretty much everybody and was talking to all the people and girls and all the rock guys. And he was like, "Hey, man, do you want to come out to the studio, back to the studio tonight and hang out, maybe have a few beers, like bring some of your people over?" And I'm like, and that just seemed like a golden opportunity. Like,
Right.
For what? I don't know. Hang out at a cool, I was like, yeah, I'll get to know this guy. It'll be cool. So we did that. And then he met, and I was like walking around and looking at mics and all this kind of stuff. And he's, chatting up people. And and in passing, he said, "Yeah, I'm, kind of looking for somebody to work here with me and work for me." And, bing.
I know a guy.
And so I said, "Hey, I'd be super involved," went for it, got a number, called him relentlessly, had set up, he told me to come in for a meeting, and I came in with tapes and this and that and this whole speech and ready to sell him. And he didn't want to hear anything like that. He goes, "Can you be here? Can you do this, do that?" And
I need dependability and someone.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about your ambition and your rock star shit. I don't want. That's very Rick. He wasn't impressed. I don't want to know about that. And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever you want, man. I'll, whatever you want." Because I was doing odd jobs and this and that, and I thought this would be a job. It really didn't pay at all, but I knew what the value was, even though I didn't know. But I knew I should do this. And so that's kind of how it started. And then I got there and he threw me in the deep end, really. Because I started to know my way around recording, obviously, and I was recording at home and I've been in many studios from pretty early on. But, now all of a sudden it's a Neves console and big, studio 2-inch tape machine. And, little do I know, we're making, like, as soon as I got there, we're making records for record labels, real major labels. My first project was like, holy cow.
It was Temple of the Dog, wasn't it? Your first project?
It actually, yeah, I came in, but so here's where people understand. So I say I was making records for major labels right off the bat, but that was, not signed or anything. That was those guys, and they'd already had a relationship with Rick. Cornell, actually, Chris tried out for Rick and Raj's band as a drummer earlier on when he first started. So, there was, and they knew Susan, his wife, manager, he was wife at the time, Susan Silver. And so there's history there. And so what that was about, and Mother LeBone had done the record that had already been done there. Alice changed stuff. And so, Rick had done their earliest demos. kind of why they got signed, because it sounded like they were ready to get signed. But my point being is that that was done off the cuff because Chris, you guys have probably read the stories, that they were moved by Andy Dine, but they, Susan basically called and said, could they get some time? And, they didn't have any money for that record, and Raj just fronted them the time and even gave them the tape, and it was used tape from the vault that we just erased. Rick just erased some whoever demos were on there.
I couldn't believe that. I heard that last night, that the Temple of the Dog record was recorded on used tape.
Yeah, just in our tape vault, they just Rick just grabbed some reels that
we're doing this shit for free for him anyway. We'll just
there was no pretense for. I mean, there was no goal. They were just doing this.
They didn't know what
happened. It wasn't for a label or a record or anything.
That's awesome.
It was like, let's go in. I got these songs, and it kind of turned into that. And so, when I came in, they had tracked already, but he was mixing it, and so he's like throwing me and showing me what's going on. And so I was immediately learning, the board and the system and running, the tape machine and doing reels, and he just, crash course, bam. Which was a great record to do that on because of how straightforward it was and such a London Bridge sounding record. And then, the next thing after that was a new band out of Portland that got signed to Interscope, which was a brand new label then. And, it was just like, all of a sudden I'm just doing major label stuff. And then he'd give me time to do other local people demos to start building my skills in the studio and familiarity and stuff.
Do you like the music that you're working on? Did you hear Temple of the Dog and was like, yeah, or is it just kind of like, this is just work?
I try to explain this a lot. I mean, I like all music and stuff like that. I'm pretty easy that way, but it was just that at that time I was still,
just wasn't your cup of tea.
I was in my world,
No.
I all I thought about was what I wanted to get out of this. And it's terrible and selfish, but that's what you are when you're young. I was taking note. I'm listening. It's good. It sounds good, but it's a little, I was tripping out all the time and feeling under pressure because Rick's intimidating and hard to work for. And this was a lot to take in. And all of a sudden this is like it was such a, I went from thinking I was pro to like, whoa, now this is professional and stuff sounds good. And those tapes, I have to label right and do tones and tails out and make sure that everything's calibrated right, because it's getting sent to somewhere in LA to another, it could get mixed by who knows who. And it just, the whole concept changed, and the reality of, wow, it's much more serious, and this is for real, and it's not just I'm duping a cassette, you know what I mean, or whatever. It changed. I stepped into it and was like, so my head was not screwing up, and you got to remember too, there was it wasn't Pro Tools or anything like that. There's no undo button. We're working on tape. I screw something up or I punch in something wrong over something, and Rick was meticulous and it was very almost scientific, and what frequencies and the patch bay was never labeled right, and if you didn't know it, and just the timing, and he was classically trained and pianist, he just had that way about him. So, and you really punching in, like people nowadays push a button to punch in Pro Tools, who cares, where you like this, you had to count, you had to time, you had to know, you got to get in syllable and out, and like it was a thing. I'm always at the remote, like tense, like it was intense all the time. I'd come home and I'm like, it'd take me forever to come down off a day at the studio at 3 a.m.
That stuff blows my mind.
So it was a total different way of working and intensity and all that.
And when people ride the fader, when you ride the fader up and down on a vocal,
Oh yeah,
stuff like that.
that's nothing compared. I mean,
Right,
to me,
cutting on
the
tape.
hard parts were the tape machine. For instance, fast forward to like, you're working with, I mean, at the time, it didn't seem as important. Now that I know how historic some of the songs are, but, and you got Rick there and you're running the machine and he tells you where the punch is and you got to count and time or whatever it might be, a guitar, different tricky punches and stuff. And if you went over something and it was really, he nailed something, or you just went over the last word, or you cut it off short or something, everybody's looking at you like, dude, that was the take, and now it's gone, and it's you.
Yeah.
And you're always on. You always think you're going to get fired any second. That's what it was like.
God, that would be terrible.
It was so different than how recording people just.
Did you see people get shit canned? Is that why you thought that? Would that?
Oh
happen?
Oh yeah. It was such a different. If you hear about like the old, like when you hear 60s stuff and like they wore lab coats and it was just a much more serious game, and just the tools and how things were done, the workflow was so different, because it's not like you have it today where
Right.
on a computer where, I mean, unless your hard drive fails, which I've had plenty of those when they first came out. But I mean, now it's just, you don't worry about that stuff. You're not going to lose a take. You have a gazillion of them. It automatically takes your takes.
Right.
So that's why it was a real job. I mean, it was,
And I would like to. I want to say, but it was fun. But you don't make it sound very fun.
it wasn't fun. I mean, that's the thing. And I'm sure if I worked in New York or LA, it would have been even, harder and competitive and stuff like that. But no, it wasn't fun. And I was, and at the same time, I was also, to be quite honest, because I knew all these guys and I knew we were peers in the scene, and they're making their record. They're, like with Pearl Jam, for instance, it was different too because of the Love Ode thing happening. Mm-hmm. And that was a whole different scenario. But me personally, I was kind of envious the whole time I'm working, but also caught up in making sure I'm, really killer at what I'm doing, because Rick held, I was learning and saw how this is important. And I knew I was learning a skill, but also kind of feeling, I'm just going to use this to get to
your next,
my other dream or whatever.
So
it's just a different minds. It's hard for other people to get it. And it's a different era, different, everything. So
there was something I wanted that I thought was hilarious because going back to that podcast I watched that you were on before, there was a story you told about a couple stories about Stone Gossard, which I've not told you this yet. Pearl Jam is my end all be all favorite band.
Oh, okay.
So like all this stuff is just it's the pinnacle for me, But the story about Stone, as you said, you were peers, and you wanted to be the one making the record, and
right.
he said this thing about like, gee, aren't you glad you got this job, man?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like one of the first, we weren't even doing the record yet. We were doing demos for the record, but at London Bridge. And when the first time he saw me there, I was opening the door for them or something. He's like, "Oh, whoa, what are you doing here?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm like, working with Rick and da da da." He's just, "Oh my God, how cool is that?" He was like,
do you think
it was the coolest thing in the world?
Okay, so he wasn't being sarcastic. He was
no, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like no, not at all. He thought it was fantastic, and I mean, yeah, he knew that he'd been to some of my shows, and we partied a ton of times and ran around Seattle a bunch, and was like super tight with him. But I mean, we totally knew each other from the scene, but no, it wasn't sarcastic at all. It was like they were all very, even, and Jeff as well. It was like a cool thing. So
That's cool.
But I still felt weird about it.
Right. Because you wanted to be, you didn't want to be like, here I
Yeah.
am making your record. I want to make
Well,
my
and also, yes, you know, that was just my immaturity and all that at the time. But, you know, and I tell you about the May stuff, we kind of had some success, excuse me, some, you know, some success, it seemed like. And then to some degree, and so I kind of felt like I was slipping back. Like they're on a label and making a record. And I quit that and I started making stuff, and then nothing has happened yet. And now I'm working here. You know, that's little. They didn't have a problem. I was the one tripping.
Right. Well, that's awesome. The other story. Well, I was lucky enough to meet Stone back in 2008 after a Pearl Jam show, and got to talk to him for a brief minute, and you know, tell the guys like you're the reason I picked up a guitar. You and Mike McCready, pretty much, more or less, and Marty McFly. But one thing that struck me about him was, you know, my wife made the introduction. I didn't want to bother him. I just kind of was like, there he is. I just want to sit here and order a drink, and I don't know.
I did that with so many people. I'm not gonna say anything.
Like, I don't want to do that. She just turned around and said,
that's kind of what wives are for, because that's what they do.
Well, I'm very thankful she did that, because we, you know, he talked to us for a minute and got signed the shirt or whatever.
Holy cool, he's funny as hell.
But it was he was with some people. He was with Smitty, the tour manager. I don't know if
I know of him. Yeah.
And then there was a moment where it was just he and I was just trying to give him his space. He just played a show and everything. So, and he says to me, "You've got a burning question. What's your burning question?" So I went over to his table and sat down and talked for a minute. And then he said, the thing that struck me was, he asked me what I thought about the records. He was like, what do you think about the Pearl Jam records? And I was like, well, you know, I don't listen to, or I love all of them. Like, I'm a huge fan. Like, I'm kind of biased, but like, there's some noise tracks that I might not listen to every time, but I understand it serves a bigger purpose. And then it was a great night, got to say goodbye and everything. But looking back at that moment, I was like, this dude wrote the Alive riff, and he just expressed some pretty big insecurity about how he feels about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. I take it more like this. He and this is something about Stone, man. He lives it. He thinks about it all the time. This is what he cares like that. It's really interesting when you told me he asked you what you thought of the records, because he wants to know. Like, it really matters to him. That
blew my mind. I was like, the guy that wrote Alive and Why Go and all these songs that I love was like, you know, what do you think about it? Is it okay? I was like, what?
You know, it sounds like how he was with Rick. We'd go on after the studio. Sometimes we'd take him home. He was staying at this place. Anyway, we drive him home, and Rick's car, and I'd be in the back. And I remember him going, Rick, just tell me you like us. Because Rick wouldn't give out compliments. He's very stoic about that stuff. And just act like you like us. You know? I mean, kind of joking, but not, you know? And, but yes, he's, it matters to him. And that's the thing about that record too. And I learned so much, all in hindsight, taking it. But what it showed me, like, those guys were, like, I've had people ask me early on or whatever, different times, people be like, oh, tell us some studio stories and craziness and stuff. I'm like, there's no stories. There's no craziness. It was just work. Like, they came in early morning, started playing, you know, what should we do? It was thought. Like, they were always kind of not freaking out or worrying, but, you know, they were trying to make a record for real art. Like, they were there to do something. It wasn't rock and roll party Motley Crue stuff or something. It was, you know, it was like so nothing like that. Like, it was so boring. So I don't have stories that are entertaining, because
not juicy stories anyway. But I mean,
there's nothing entertaining to tell. Like, what? We went there and started recording, working, and that's what it was.
Was there like any piece of gear that you all use that might surprise somebody that was on that team?
No, see that.
Like that?
That's the thing.
with Marshalls and Tube Screamer.
Well, yeah, it was really straight, kind of like the Temple of Dog thing. Got a little bit more, more stuff than Temple because they'd gotten an advancement, got some money. I know Mike was the most excited about everything. And, I think Stone, I remember they were like, after when I got my record deal, I bought way more stuff. They like bought, I remember he got like a Supro amp, because Jimi Hendrix, he used one somewhere recording. Right. He got a Gretsch. I don't know. That's about it, maybe. And then he just had his setup he used from all of Lobo, maybe Green River, but he used to do the Marshall and Fender Twin combo. That was his thing. And then Mike used me and Mike used to rehearse in the same room for a while. And he had the same, so sometimes we use each other's Marshall or whatever. So he had the same Marshall from that, because I recognized it because it was a red Marshall head. And I think mine was there, so we'd blend them. And he got some, Strat. He got I don't know. Not that it was really, no. It was like really basic. Jeff got all his 12-string guitars. Yeah. So that was a thing. Outside of that, like, we had a nice kit. We had the luxury. Like, this all seems, in LA, these things were done normally. So you got to remember, we're still in Seattle, even though it was a nice big studio. We're not used to having, there wasn't major label records being made all the time up there. So, we had this luxury, seemed over the top. It's done all the time everywhere else, but we had a drum tech tuner guy, and they rented a special snare, a Noble Cooley wood snare, and he'd come in and have that tune, which, was amazing, and it was great. But, if you talk to other big producers in LA or whatever, well, that's normal, but it seemed like this big, fancy spending money thing that we were doing. But yeah, it was so straightforward. And London Bridge is known to be straightforward. They had the meat and potatoes of everything, the stuff you needed. Amazing board, amazing tape machine. The room was designed great. Just the standard mics you would expect, nothing less, nothing more. Same with the outboard. Nothing was over. They didn't have a ton of anything, just the right classic stuff. And that's all Rick needed. He was not a gearhead. He didn't care. It would have to be something he really needed. Which was great for me to learn that way, how to get straight, good sounds with the right stuff.
So are you responsible for the guitar sounds on that, or is that several other people, or?
Well, so I'm known for guitars and guitar sounds, obviously, and my stuff is much more. I throw the kitchen sink on everything, because I love that stuff. But what I became, and what was, Rick being as smart as he is and strategic as he is, he knew that because he wasn't a rock guy or band guy in that regard, and he knew I had rapport with them, and understood guitars and rock roll and stuff like that. So I kind of could bridge that relationship with Stone and Mike, kind of letting them just do what they do, but I could relay it to Rick more, like what we're thinking. I go, that's cool or not cool. Right. That sounds really good. And he would that's what he would look for from me, make sure that it's cool to a guy that knows that stuff in the scene, and a rock guy.
Cool to a 13-year-old kid in Ashland, Kentucky. That was
right. And I knew basic things. I knew my stuff about guitars. I'm like, yeah, let's just,
those guitars.
Let's put in that. Let's take my amp too and blend them to, and he knew those tricks already. So, that's kind of how we worked, and then that got more and more developed over time. But and that record,
They
Like
sound
I
so
said, once we
lush.
got good sounds going, we just kind of went with it. And then the record was mainly them tracking, and the whole thing was about getting the perfect take. So
Mhm.
there'd be we went through so many reels of tape, and the whole
It
the
was
whole
all
time we
even
had to
flow.
spend going through the reels to find the right takes was a whole other story that people today wouldn't even spend that much time in the studio making the record, let alone going through all that. And the overdubs, and then letting Eddie become Eddie. And so, most of the times, Rick would go home, go out to dinner and leave me, because him being there all the time when we were doing that would just blur everything. So by me being there doing stuff, I have the notes, what was good takes, what was this, what was that. And he'd come in the morning, listen down to that, then work with the guys through the day. We'd be doing our stuff. Here's the stuff for tonight. He'd split, and we'd let them become Pearl Jam, really.
Mhm.
And that's not, I don't know how records really aren't made like that anymore. So
The guitars on Temple of the Dog and even 10, the best adjective I could think of is lush. They're just real lushy, kind of fluidy. There's nothing else.
a lot of
sound
that's
like
his
those guitars.
playing, but as far as getting those sounds, it was like, how do we get a good straight Marshall sound? How do we get a good Twins? Like they were, there was no, not a lot of fairy dust on anything. It was
There's like
just,
the roto vibe effects or univibe effect on
yeah.
that sounds. It's just.
But honestly, that was just a roto vibe pedal.
Yeah, just the Dunlop roto vibe pedal.
Yeah, just
not even a univibe yet.
no, it's just one of those red based univibe pedals. I can't believe I remember that.
I've got one. It's one of my favorite pedals.
Yeah, there was, in recording Mike, he, like I said, he'd be nervous, and and I know how it is too. Like he was, all you're having is dreams of his, what's my interview and guitar player going to be like, magazine like, so he's trying to make his statement, and this is his dream come true. And so that was fun to watch, him in the control room next to me and punching him in, and we'd set up a little folding table, and he was always so wired up.
Were you there with him when he did the Reach Down solo?
Not on Temple.
Okay.
No. But all the Pearl Jam stuff. So, most of the stuff was tracked on Temple.
That's cool.
I can't remember exactly. I was so like, that's when it was all
a little flustered.
Yeah, dude, it was like full speed. And I was like, I didn't know what I got into really. And like, even going home or wherever it was people, when I did see people, was in the studio all the time, but it was like, I couldn't even really explain to people what I was doing. You know?
So I do
Pearl Jam. I have a better memory of, but yeah, I just remember trying not to screw up, but yet wanting to be as part of it as I could.
Oh man, I think you succeeded. That is just like one of the best records ever. Do you feel that way about it?
I do now in hindsight. I just was so close to it, and then it took a while. Like I said, I had this story about when I'm doing Black, doing vocals with Eddie, and so everybody went home. It was just me and him, and I had, I'd get his lyrics and we'd Xerox them in the office upstairs, bring them down and put them on the console, because when you're punching on tape, I have to have the lyrics in front of me to make sure I know where he's coming in or whatever. And I remember we're going through stuff, and I remember I wasn't impressed yet with the record. I didn't know what was going to happen with it. Wasn't even a thing. And I just remember thinking, oh, he writes pretty good lyrics. And then, now years later, I see a video of him singing that song in like South America with
everybody,
tens of thousands of people singing it back to him. I'm like, wow, dude, like you were sitting there kind of giving
that is crazy.
A slight like, hey, not bad lyric, and so, over time now and things like that, I'm going, wow, this is a good record.
You never know what's going to hit.
And I've actually come recently, I've been throwing Temple of the Dog on and going, damn,
That's awesome. Do you feel the same way about 10? Do you put that on and be like, man, this is a great record?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I've ever just put on. I didn't even have a copy. Now that we have streaming, I can pull things up. The copy I have is my platinum record, which you can't play. But I remember. Okay, put it this way: I think 10 years went by, maybe 5 years, and it was big. It was known, and I had these guys come over to paint my mother's house to get painted, and I had these worker guys that front town I knew. And they were playing it on a boombox, while they were working. And I went, oh, whoa, and I was hearing it playing, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. And they're like, that's when it kind of first hit me, kind of. I mean, yeah, I saw them on MTV and things like that, but I was in the studio all the time anyway, do my own thing. So that was the first thing where I went, oh, I guess this is a thing. And then I just think I didn't want to accept it or whatever. Then it got grunge, and then it was, 2000s or whatever by then. But yes, as I've gotten older, I totally appreciate it and found that, and had to get it my own thing going, wow, you should be proud of that and talk about it. And then the thing like podcasts came on, I go, oh, I guess people really do care about this stuff. I think, yeah, it's been a weird journey for me. I
think even now, I feel like the 90s are kind of having a rebirth. There's a resurgence.
Absolutely.
It's hard
thank
for me
goodness, because it's keeping me busy. So,
yeah. Dude, I have lived in the 90s ever since. It's like,
you said it first. I do too, man. I do and I don't. I've totally embraced everything in the future and technology, all that stuff, but. The further we get away from it, it was good times. And now I can really appreciate and be so happy that I was so deeply part of it. But I definitely didn't realize it for a while at the time.
As we're winding down, we only got a minute or so left. I wondered if you'd humor me, and you might not even agree with this sentiment, but I would call Pearl Jam 10 a perfect album from start to finish. There's no waste. There's no fodder, every track is great. But if you had to cut one track, what track would it be?
I don't even know the album that was.
All right. I got it pulled up so I can tell you. I thought that might be an issue.
I don't offhand. I mean, as I've been getting to know it, re-know it again. And this is kind of like when directors or something make a movie, because they're cutting, or an editor cutting movies. They're so close to it, they don't see it that. But as I've come through it, I could agree with you. I go, wow, this is a well-written all the way through record. I can't think of something off the cuff. What's your take on it?
We've got Once, Even Flow, Alive, Why Go, Black, Jeremy, Oceans, Porch, Garden, Deep, and Release. And
they're all good, man. I remember liking all the deeper tracks a lot when we were not knowing they were deep tracks, but at the time I remember a lot of those songs like Garden and Oceans and stuff. Breathe, all those. I thought those were all kind of good. And by the way, real quick tidbit, I always thought we were doing working titles because everything was one name.
We're going to keep going. That was our hour, but let's finish this up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I was surprised when they actually came out in the record that way.
Oh yeah, in that order.
Well, they were all one name still. I thought they were working.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why they did on the next album. There was an elderly woman behind the counter.
Oh, there you go. They made up for it.
Yeah, more than. All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out and talking with us.
Yeah.
Amazing. Man, maybe we could do it again sometime.
There's definitely enough for a part 2.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Sure. I appreciate you guys having me. Fun talking.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Talk about stuff, important stuff. Mind like me.